Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special episode of Beyond the Barclay with me, Jez Davies. I'm, of course, joined with my illustrious co-host, Morgan Hewitt. Morgan, if you'd just like to tell us a little bit more about the episode today, please.
Very, very special episode. I'm lucky enough to speak to ex-former DOF Director of Football, Stuart Webber. It's a long episode, but it's worth the wait. I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Morgan. Straight away, you're laughing. I can see you.
Yeah, theme. I haven't had the theme tune for a while, so I missed it.
Yeah, I did say it was a bit cheesy, didn't I? But there we go. I hope you're well, sir. And we are absolutely honoured today to be joined with Mr. Stuart Webber. Hello, Stuart. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, thought it was like an episode of The Office with that theme tune come on.
I'm a big fan of The Office, so yeah, maybe we can do some David Brent quotes. Just like to perhaps introduce yourself, and just obviously talk to us a little bit about your history in Norwich City, please.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on as well. So I was sporting director from May 2017, more or less, I think it was, until 2024. I came to the club from Huddersfield. Was the club's first sort of sporting director when they, decided to Delia, Michael, and the rest of the board decided to go in a slightly different way from the traditional, let's say, manager and sort of chief exec sort of model, and they wanted to bring in a sporting director, which is now obviously pretty common at most clubs. So I was the first one at Norwich, which will always be a nice little honour. And then had more or less 7 years at the club. Had some amazing highs, some not so great lows, and lots and lots sort of in between. But it was an amazing time, and very lucky to have worked for a great club, worked for unbelievable people, met so many people, built so many relationships. Incredible part of the world. I'd only ever been to Norwich for football, as you do, which is normally you fly in or you get a bus and you leave, and you don't really see too much of the area. But luckily over that time, I've spent so much time over the Norfolk coast, and it's just an incredible, as you guys know, incredible part of the world, and a bit of a hidden gem, really. Still, the amount of people I still speak to within the UK who don't know about it, which I think is actually quite a good thing, because obviously you can go some touristy places and it's rammed and it's not overly enjoyable, whereas here it's still that nice of, like, sometimes you can feel like you're on holiday, but it's actually a little bit more peaceful. So amazing time, really.
No, definitely. And it was I guess a good time, and you, obviously yourself and Daniel Fark, who we'll obviously go on and talk about, brought some really good times for the club, and probably some unexpected times, but I guess sort of rewinding to perhaps before you came to Norwich, you were at Huddersfield, but perhaps talking a little bit before that, you'd already built a strong reputation in football, and could you sort of briefly outline your career path up until that point, and what you feel were your most formative experiences during that time?
Yeah, so I started at Wrexham. Who obviously now, when you say to people Wrexham, they're like, "Oh, Wrexham, unbelievable!" It's like, I was there when we weren't that famous. Although it's amazing what's happened there. And in fairness to Wrexham, for sort of fans from the outside give them a lot of stick of Hollywood FC and all that, which, by the way, I understand as a football fan. But to be honest, when you've lived in that area, to go back and see the regeneration and what this buzz has done for a community, it's actually unbelievable. So I always challenge people when they go, "It's a disgrace." I'm like, no, honestly, it's a different town now in a positive way. So, I think it's amazing what sort of happened, and forget about the, my morals, thoughts of a football fan, of money spent, etc., etc. That's a different argument. But in terms of actually what these people have brought to a small town in North Wales. It's incredible, really. And but that's where my career started, and I did everything. I worked on the ground staff there, helping with the pitches, and it's always a thing that every club I've been at since, they joke about we always have top pitches, because I am a bit anal about pitches. You know what I mean? It's I'm sure we'll talk about the redevelopment at Colney, but in terms of the pitches, I'm like, if we want to play football a certain way, you have to have a good pitch. That's like non-negotiable. So we need to invest in that. We need to invest in the staff and all the rest of it. So that's where that sort of love of pitches sort of come from. But then and then I did everything, coaching there, scouting, right the way through to heading up the academy. But I worked with like some incredible people. One we sadly lost last week, a guy called Joey Jones, who won 2 European Cups for Liverpool in the 70s, and he was sort of a mentor to so many people, because there's so many staff members have come out of Wrexham. It's something like 50 odd were working in professional football now. And you speak to any of them, he would be a consistent theme in that, because he was an incredibly sort of strong man, very like put sort of manners on you, in terms of like, we were young. It was like, it's people like me, Steve Cooper, were there at the time together. A guy called Andy O'Boyle, who's got a really big job in Liverpool now, and people like Joey would, when you're getting a bit cocky when you're in your early 20s, would sort of put you in your place. But it came from a real position of like caring about us and loving us, really. So as much as at the time, some of the stuff, you'd look back and go, oh, it's a bit harsh, but actually there were lessons which were vitally important, and stuff that I've used in my life consistently, whether it be as a father or someone in a work sort of context, about just how, he always had sort of time for people, and he'd care for people, and he'd be honest with you, and it was something I took from him. And then when I worked at Liverpool, I worked with a guy called Frank McParland, who was academy director there, and a real sort of tough sort of scouser. And he was the same, just taught me about being honest with people and just challenging a difficult conversation and not sort of letting things linger and, causing a problem. It's like, just have it straight out and sort it out. And often you get it dealt with a lot quicker. And that's something that I've taken with me in terms of my leadership style. Over the years, I think I've probably got a little bit better at delivering that message in a, nicer way sometimes to certain people or whatever, because you have to understand that some people find it more hard to deal with brutal honesty than others. So as you grow older and more mature, you learn that people and society changes as well. Of course, when I was growing up with Joey, it's 20 years ago. 20 years ago, mobile phones weren't even a massive thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like it was, you could say what you want without worry of ever offending anyone. Almost like I look back and think, well, no one ever got offended. You just sort of laughed or told them to do what, you know what I mean? It wasn't like you didn't hold sort of like a grudge of, oh, this was said to me at 12 minutes past 2 on Thursday afternoon. It's a bit like, you either fought for yourself and fought back, or laughed and saw it as what it was. But you sort of, had to learn to adapt then. But I still believe, and it's probably why the relationships I've had with, certainly at Norwich and Huddersfield, when I've been in that more leadership position, I think probably why the relationships are so strong with players and staff was because they always knew they'd get the truth from me and they'd get an honest answer. But it had always come from a position of, I'm telling you something you don't want to hear, but I'm telling you a position of actually caring about you, as opposed to, I'm not saying it, I don't want to tell you something you don't want to hear. I'd rather a beautiful conversation, but it's not. So I think in them early years, I learned them things quickly from them people, and then it sort of struck a chord, and it made probably life just a lot simpler, really, by going that, if someone asks me to get an answer, they know what I think. You have to learn to become a little bit better at being diplomatic and stuff as you get older and stuff. Of course, I understand that, but I still think the most respected leaders in the world that people talk about are the ones who go, he actually tells you as it is. So that's what I try and do, as opposed to sort of fluff it up a little bit. But then I went to Liverpool. Amazing time. What a club that is. That's it is. I know it's Barcelona saying more than the club, but Liverpool is more than a club for sure. It's massive. And we had a good experience there. Worked with some top people. Brilliant. Then I went to QPR, which was a less good experience. But I learned a lot there. You know, they were in the Premier League at the time, and then it's when they were spending all that crazy money. I learned a lot there about how not to do it in terms of culture and environment and stuff like that. And I was on the receiving end of some stuff, which I was a bit like, why can't people just say good morning or hold the door open for you or play please and thank you? You know, just things which anyone who's ever worked with me would tell you I'm anal about that. You know, it's just be a good person. Do you know what I mean? It's not hard to say please and thank you, you know, and be respectful and hold the door open for someone. Yes, whether it's a woman or a man, it don't matter. Hold the door open for someone. It's just you know what. So QPR learned maybe the opposite to that, which was good. And then Jez has gone off here. Look,
yeah, he does that.
And then I bought and then after QPR was Wolves, where I went as head of recruitment at Wolves, which was good, good fun. We got promoted from League One to the Championship, and then it was Huddersfield, because at that point I knew I wanted to be the sort of do the sporting director role, because I'd worked with one at Liverpool and Damien Comolli, so I knew it was a real role I wanted to do. I worked with one at Wolves, a guy called Kev Felwell, and then the opportunity came to go to Huddersfield, which was my first sort of step into the sort of sporting director role, which is great because Huddersfield, they'd had the model previously of a guy called Ross Wilson, so the owner and the club sort of understood the role, which is important. But I saw there was a chance there to do massive improvements at that club, because, you know, Huddersfield's a small club. You know, our budget when we got promoted was, you know, 23rd in the league, you know, so it should not have happened. But what the owner there, or he's left there now, he's not the owner, but he's a risk taker. So he's someone who I learned a lot from, so much from him about, like, you know, he has a saying all the time, it's risk versus reward. And, you know, if we wanted to try and do something extraordinary, you know, we had to take some risks, and that, you know, that led us to the first time they ever appointed a foreign head coach. We signed a load of foreign players, a load of young players on loan. And yeah, obviously ended up in, all the things came together and ended up in a promotion. And then they did unbelievable the year after to stay up as well. I think people called it a miracle going up, and I can see why people say that. I think it was an even bigger miracle to stay up, because we know how hard that is, obviously. So that was that. And then the call came for Norwich, which came out of the blue. I wasn't looking to leave Huddersfield. I was incredibly happy there. I just signed actually a new deal there. I loved it. You know, it was myself, it was Dave Wagner, it was Dean Hoyle. It was like the three of us were worked so well together, complement each other really well. Could have a blazing row and be laughing 2 minutes later, and you know, it was amazing actually. And but then Norwich sort of call came. My first reaction was no interest, and that's nothing against Norwich. It's just because I was happy. And I don't do Huddersfield 2 years, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm bored or need a new fresh challenge. It definitely wasn't that. But then I got told, listen, just go and meet Delia and Michael, at least, you know, do that conversation. So I was like, okay, well, you know, it's Delia and Michael, isn't it? You know, incredibly well renowned within football. Obviously Delia with her other stuff as well, and Michael with his stuff. But in terms of football, known as just, you know, good humans and good owners. So I met them, and yeah, they made it very hard for me to not come, just because of they'd either done their research on me, or they just naturally said all of the right things to sort of get me excited, you know, in terms of, you can come here, you can build something. We want to build the academy again.
Sorry to interrupt, Stuart. Pardon? Stuart, sorry to interrupt you in full flow. No, I think with Delia and Michael, I think because they're so experienced, or were so experienced at the time, and still are, you know, still great sort of stewards of the club, I guess. But I guess you say obviously that, you know, they knew what to say naturally. I think that's probably a bit of that. But I would imagine they would have done the research on you as well, and obviously what you've done at Huddersfield and the way they wanted to go with that model. But yeah, so no, I was just saying, I think, you know, they would have 100% knew what they wanted to say. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Stuart, do you know Do you know anything about like how they just what made them decide to change that into the DOF model? Because I remember that season with Alex Neil, and I remember it was at Christmas time. I came back to Carrow Road to watch Norwich play Huddersfield, and
Friday night.
You kicked it. Yeah, that's right. And I was like, oh, this is an easy 3 points. I didn't really pay too much attention to Huddersfield at the time, and obviously you guys won quite considerably. And then the sort of our season sort of tapered off, if I remember rightly, Jez. So what made them decide to go down that path? Do you know?
Yeah, so they had a board. So I think it was Jez Moxey was chief exec, wasn't he then?
That's right. Yeah.
Obviously, that didn't work out for whatever reason, and so Jez went, and this is my understanding. This is what I've been told over the years. The board then did like an away day to go, okay, we've just lost 2 chief execs in less than a year. Obviously David had been here a long time, hadn't he? Done some good stuff. Jez comes in less of a time, so it's almost like he sacked 2 within, let's call it a year, or they've gone or whatever. So you're like, actually, do we need to rethink what we're doing here? And apparently, as part of this away day, they spoke about different models at different clubs and different profiles of people. So not necessarily individuals per se, but do we need a young head coach? Do we need an old head coach? Do we need whatever? Do we need more experience on the board? Blah blah blah. And anyway, they came up with, and I think it was Ed Balls' sort of original sort of idea of what about sporting director model. It's becoming more prominent in the UK. It's obviously very prominent on the continent. And they said, oh, Huddersfield have got one. And Delia said, well, why don't we get a guy from Huddersfield? Because obviously the game you're referring to was probably fresh in all of their heads as well. Because, I mean, people forget that night. We had like a 19-year-old centre-half who we signed from Dortmund's second team playing for us. It's the lad who scored 2 was Elias Kashunga. He was on loan from Ingolstadt, with an option to buy for like €1 million. It's like, it was a team that most people would look and go, who are these? Like, not even heard.
Exactly how I felt.
And we were brilliant that night. And to be fair, we'd been brilliant for a while and we'd been going under the radar. But that night, we came to the fore because obviously we turned up at Carrow Road and battered Norwich in reality. And it's live on Sky. So obviously, people are suddenly like, actually, these are quite good. It's Christmas. They're third in the league. They're actually, maybe these are here to sort of stay. And we had a top midfielder, Aaron Moy. Like he was a Premier League player playing for, he was unbelievable. And I remember that night. And bear in mind, he's playing against House. I know Howson played because Howson scored. I think maybe Dorrans, and 2 top players at this level, right? And he just ran the game. I remember thinking, wow, you've literally just run that game of football. And but anyway, going back to your point, so I think that's where they came from. As we need to, and again, quite visionary, really, because I think they were looking at the age of the squad a little bit. I think they were looking at the fact of, with the exception of the 2 Murphys, who'd obviously, I think that season, Jacob had his proper breakthrough, didn't he? And Josh was sort of a little bit on the periphery. I think they were like, okay, this is maybe the time to try and do something different. And that's when they came to me. But I think that is born out of that away day of how do we approach this differently. We don't want an all-empowering chief exec who's making every decision from player signings to what toilet rolls in the Barclay. We don't want just a manager who's making all them decisions either. We want it to be a bit more collaborative. And, and I think as well from Delia and Michael, something which struck with me when I met them for the first time, I spoke about the need of their involvement. I said, listen, it works really well at Huddersfield because Dean Hoyle, the owner, he's at the end of the phone. He will, if I'm trying to convince a player and I think he can help, I'll bring him to that meeting. I said, Delia, with you, I said, you're also like, pretty famous, so having you there to convince a wife or a mum, I said that's pretty powerful. Would you be willing to do that stuff? I said, because that's important. Like, if you're not, tell me now, no problem. But I said, but I'd rather know. And they're like, oh, we'd love to do that. We're not allowed at the training ground. I'm like, but you own it. And they're like, yeah, no, they don't like us fraternizing, which a word I didn't understand, fraternizing with players and staff. I'm like, but my God, I've been in your company for 10 minutes, and as human beings, you 2 are incredible. And they're still the 2 best humans I've ever met. And I'm like, that is so powerful for us, having staff members going, Delia Smith just sat and had lunch with me. you know, they're going home to tell their mums or dads or sisters or whatever to go, the owner of the club sat and had lunch with me today in the canteen. That is incredibly like powerful. So yeah, so I think they've maybe been pushed a little bit out inadvertently, you know, and whatever. And because they're so respectful and, you know, that like they're unbelievable, really. They won't sort of stick their nose in. They sort of just sort of will go, okay, yeah, if we're not allowed there, we won't be there, you know. Whereas some owners would quite rightly go, no, sorry, mate, I own it, I'm coming. That's just not them. That's not them as humans, you know. So yeah, but I think that's where the idea came from, and to make the whole thing just much more collaborative, which is my way of working anyway. You know, I know often people will see, because I'm always the one who ends up doing the media, people will think, oh, he's in charge of everything. I couldn't be further from the truth. I'll take the hit for everything because I don't mind that, because it's a bit like I'd rather me be getting sick than other people. But the reality is everything we did was, you know, was a collaboration. That's just how it was. The good times and you know, the not so good.
Yeah. So I think obviously as well. Sorry, Morgan. You had obviously you mentioned a lot of the sort of German influence with obviously Wagner, Fark, some of the players you mentioned as well. You know, coming on loan from Dortmund, and that came into Norwich as well a lot with Zimmerman, Frank, Leitner, who was superb, by the way. What a footballer he was, and so, one or two others. I mean, with that sort of German influence, where did that sort of come from for you? And you know, how did you sort of bring it into Huddersfield and Norwich?
Yeah, so Huddersfield, it was when I knew Dean would be open to a foreign head coach. I did a load of work around what sort of markets was there potential gaps, you know, in terms of being able to get players from. And we looked at loads of different leagues in Europe, and we're like, okay, will there players from there be able to come in the Championship? Well, it's difficult, you know, the physicality of it, 46 games. But then when we looked at Germany, like physically, the players are pretty similar to ours, and mentality pretty similar, really. And then at that time, the second Bundesliga, like the salaries they were paying their players meant that even at Huddersfield, we could afford some of these guys. So it was like, actually, there's a real gap there in the market. Then it was the same time there was a real boom in German sort of coaches. You know, you had obviously Jurgen Klopp doing what he was doing at Dortmund. You had, well, he just finished at Dortmund at the time, but at Dortmund you had Thomas Tuchel was just coming through at Mainz. You know, so there's a general sort of boom around the German like coaches. And yeah, I remember when I went and met David for the first time in his house in Dortmund. I went and watched them train a few times, because the training grounds are often open in Germany on certain days, when I watched his teams play. And then when I met him for the first time, his clarity of thought around how he wanted his team to play, how he developed players, etc., etc. I was like, oh, okay, Dean, this guy's interesting. We need to. He's different to anything you would have ever seen as an owner. So that's how we came to it. And then in terms of Norwich, you know, at the time I got criticised for bringing Daniel in terms of more the outside sort of media sort of stuff of, oh, he's just copying what he did at Huddersfield. And I'm like, well, I can see why you'd say that, but that's a bit sort of unfair, really. It's a bit almost, you know, I took it a little bit of offence from that, because I was like, all right, okay. Yeah, I've only gone back to Dortmund on the hope that they've produced another good second team coach. But the reality is David and Daniel were very different. And at this point, it was, I felt Daniel was a really good fit. Daniel was always going to be our choice at Huddersfield if David went, because we always, like, David was getting offered big jobs at Huddersfield, because obviously the job he was doing, and it was like, oh, if we don't go up, he's going to leave. So, you know, I'd been talking to Daniel for a long time. As you do in this role with head coaches, you have to get to know them. You don't just, oh God, we sat the manager, let's go, and who's available. It's like it's an ongoing sort of process. So yeah, so then with Daniel, it was the sort of same idea, but with a lot more thought around developing young players from within. You know, we didn't really have that at Huddersfield. The academy wasn't particularly great. There was some good success stories from there. Phil Billing and Lewis O'Brien has just actually gone to Wrexham. You know, so that's some talent in there, but nowhere near what Norwich was. And Cat 1 Norwich. You know, Huddersfield were Cat 2 or 3, and they ended up closing it down. But whereas here it was like a real thought on, there's some good young players in the system at Norwich. You know, we had Madison, who'd come back obviously from his loan from Aberdeen, and it was like, okay, we need a coach who can really develop these guys. Plus, we knew we had to bring value in the squad financially, because, you know, there's a financial hole to fill the following summer. if we didn't go up, which obviously we didn't. So, it was a slightly different strategy between what we did at Huddersfield and what we did at Norwich. But yeah, that's where the German
I think it's really fascinating. It's really interesting because I work in strategy, like product strategy. So to think that you are effectively doing data analysis across physicality of players across Europe to make that sort of gap analysis. I love all that kind of stuff. So, but I mean, I agree with you about the media saying, he's just replicating what he did with Huddersfield. And in fact, I'm going to hold my hands up and say, okay, this kind of feels like it could work out. I was excited when you came to town with Daniel Farke. Obviously, Borussia, Dortmund too, exciting. Did you, at any point in that 17-18 season, was there any points that you were like, what am I doing? Because this isn't going where I thought it would. Millwall away for a start. I'll throw that down.
Yeah, Millwall away still my worst day in football. Because it was, I could see that coming in the week into the game. So the lead up to the game, obviously we had a new sort of staff, Germans, a new team, and I still say to people, the team that day was Gunny in goal, Ivo Pinto right back, Russell Martin, Marcel Franke, James Husband, Franjic, Reed, Madison, Wes, Nelson, Josh Murphy. That is a lightweight team, right? Yeah. Some top players in there. Let's have it right. I'm not criticizing any of them individually, but collectively you go, okay, Millwall away, where it's going to be physically horrible. They had Steve Morrison up front. I remember on the day just bullying Ivo, Russ, Marcel, James Husband. It's like he played against four on his own, just literally diag, header down, second. Oh my God, midfield runners. But all week, conversations having with the guys, it was like, Millwall's different. This is a welcome to the championship game. It's going to be horrible. The grass will be long. They'll put it on us. The atmosphere, even though there's only ever 9,000 there, it's still somehow incredibly intimidating, and it's a real difficult place to play. And I kept getting met with, they won't get the ball off us. I'm like, no, they will. And when they do, it's coming right down our throat and it's going to hurt. And I was like, these are the games for Alex Tete. This is where you've got to play Alex Tete. It's where you've got to play a centre half who wants to head the ball and be aggressive. And it was no. And it was a real massive learning point, that, for our staff at the time, because you'd have to ask them, but they probably thought they were going to get sacked the next day. And the next day was when it was that Alex Tete would be playing the next game, and that we signed Grant Hanley, because it was it was my moment to go, you've got to listen to me, fellas. I've lived this life for a long time. There's certain games where we have to earn the right to play the football we want to play. Yeah. If you're 3-0 down after an hour at Millwall, it doesn't matter then if we have 70% possession. Who cares? You've got to earn the right to play, because they'll use the tools at their disposal to beat us up. That's what we'll be known as. So it was a real sort of defining day. So that was a dark day. I remember driving back from it and stopping at a service station and seeing some Norwich fans in there who didn't recognise me, and I was just embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I weren't worried about anger or abuse, because it's starting a project. I'm like, give us a chance. This is going to take a while to, I've been very clear this is going to take a few transfer windows, blah blah blah. So I wasn't worried about that bit. It was just more that I felt horrendous, because it's that's not a performance which is acceptable. It can happen, of course it can. It's the best team in the world can play. Liverpool had a game last year where they were awful, got beat somewhere. It can happen, but it was just the worst thing about that is you could see it coming a mile off. But in the end, I think it probably ended up being the best thing for us, because I think that was the punch in the face. And the one thing with Daniel, the guys, they're obviously very, very bright, very talented, and worked out, okay, we need to change. And if you remember, the next game was, I think it was Middlesbrough at home or Birmingham at home. Maybe it was Birmingham. Birmingham it was. We beat them 1-0. But it was a double six of Tete and Tom Tribal, 2 midfield players. So we played almost 4-2-3-1. And we won 1-0. I think one of the club record run of clean sheets, I think, after that Millwall game.
That's what I was going to say. I think it was a lot of there was a lot of 1-0 wins and
like 1-0 at Middlesbrough. I think Madder scored a worldie, didn't he? But that's the point, is like we were earning the right then. So then, as the season went on, we started to become a bit more expansive, and then obviously what happened the next year was great. But it was you have to earn your right to do that type of football. And
I think that leads
with that season though. I never, to answer part of your question, sorry, never wavered in what we were doing, because you could see we had enough evidence from the data, from our own eyes, to go that we're going to be all right here. We got to just stick with it. We've got to ride through it.
I'm glad you thought that, because Millwall, I still remember that day, and I'm going to be honest, and I'll get pelters for this, but that's the first game I've ever left at half-time.
Jesus, Morgan, that's a statement.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I was like, So Stuart, that's on you, mate.
Yeah.
Right, come on, let's bring it round. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to the following season. Let's talk about the following season. Unless there's anything else to add for that season, I don't think there is. But I think that the following season was a bit of a turnaround, and I think when I very much started this by saying it was an unexpected success, because we sold Maddison, we sold, like I'm saying we as if I had any kind of involvement in it. Norwich sold Maddison, Murphy, Jacob Murphy, and everyone thought, wow, I've just sold our best 2 players. What's going on here? And then we brought in, was Ben Wenday involved the previous season? I can't remember, but anyway, Wenday and Hickey, and thank you. And obviously, so them 2 came in. A few others as well. Tim Krul, what a signing that was. Maybe just talk to us a little bit about that season, and in your opinion, what sort of sparked that regeneration, I guess, of Norwich?
Yeah. I mean, listen, obviously it was a magical season. It had everything, didn't it? From a bad start in terms of some of the defeats. We got battered at home, didn't we? 3-0 against Leeds. We played all right, in my opinion. We actually, and that was the thing. The start of the season, we drew 2-2 at Birmingham. We lost 4-3 at home to West Brom, missed a penalty, Jordan Rhodes. We lost 2-1 last minute winner at Sheffield United, wide free kick, if you remember, literally on the halfway line. We lost obviously at home to Leeds 3-0. We beat Preston 2-0. Teddy scored a worldie, but we were horrific that night. It was just a bad game of football. And then we drew at Ipswich, didn't we? 1-1. They took the lead, and
Mo Lightner
scored. And but when I looked at them performances, Birmingham was difficult. Like, grass was long, it was dry, it was just a rubbish game. But West Brom at home, we played brilliant, like literally brilliantly. They score. If you remember, Tim let one through his hands. Jay Rodriguez from like 50 yards had a shot. Tim goes to catch it. Oh, it's in. It's like, oh, great. It's just one of them days where it was like, just things went wrong. But if you look at take the goals out of it, which I know you can't at football, but the performance itself, you were like, wow, we're getting close here. Then we had Leeds at home. Yeah, we lost 3-0, but large parts of that game we played really well. Sheffield United away, we played really well. Ipswich is a derby, so it's always a bit messy, them type of games anyway. So it's a bit like, a bit bitty. But dug in, defended well, and in the end did enough to deserve a point. Preston at home, ironically, the one game we won, we were terrible, but we win. In the middle of that, we played Cardiff away in the Cup, who were in the Premier League, and won, I think, 3-1. Dennis Robrenny scored, I know. Max Aarons scored at the back post, I didn't think. But we played really well, so there's you're starting to see signs of, Tim Krul, massive personality. We've just got to stick with him because, he hasn't played for a while, so we've got to get him back. But, he's going to be massive for us. We had Ben Godfrey had come back from his loan at Shrewsbury the year before, and was like, it's a matter of time till he gets in the team. Jamal Lewis was doing really well after a good breakthrough season before. Max Aarons was playing in the Cups, albeit at left back, because Felix Paslak was playing right back, if you remember. Max, you were like, oh, okay, he's taking to this like to Dr. Water. We had Buendia played in the Cup game at Cardiff, and just showed some bright bits where you're like, oh, okay, this guy's actually, he is so talented. Then we had Steeperman played as like a number 10 in the cup games, because he was nowhere near it in reality. And there he is playing in the cup games. Unfortunately, Kenny McLean got injured against Stevenage in the cup, so we didn't get to see him early on. And then you're looking at Pookie and like, he looks like he can score goals in. He just keeps getting chances. And obviously we had Jordan Rhodes, top personality, and you're like, proven goal scorer at this level. So it was like through that start of that season, and it was really tough to keep everyone's heads on it because, there's a bit of noise starting to rumble. We're losing games, and it's like, oh, this project hasn't worked. And you're like, oh my God, we're so close. Now, don't get me wrong. If you said to me, they're so close, are we going to win the league and be at Villa part of a trophy in May? I would have said probably not. But did I truly believe we had enough to be having a attack at the top six? Yeah, definitely. Because I'm like, no, this team's better than the Huddersfield team, which did it. And we got good players here, and we've got young players. They're only going to get better. We've got Daniel, who's had a full year now at this level, so he's understanding more the level of the league, etc. And I remember that Ipswich game thinking, thank God we didn't lose, because probably the noise about sacking Daniel, or maybe myself, would have been so big at that time that, it would have been hard, maybe not to do it, because I wouldn't have wanted to do it. But, maybe the next game at home and, you go one down and then, a bit like Dean, when the whole crowd's singing someone there, it's like, bloody hell, this is a long way to come back from this. But luckily we did that. And then obviously we went on a run of results, didn't we? And then we were quickly in the top six. And from that moment on, it just went momentum after momentum after momentum. And every game we were in, it just felt like we, even if we were, 3-0 down against Forest, it was like, that's all right, it's 12 minutes to go. Don't worry about that.
Game. That game. It's brilliant.
Oh, it was unbelievable. There's so many moments like that. And it was great. And, to togetherness of the players, the staff, the fans, everything. It was, it was magical, and that. I think it'd be tough to ever repeat that. Listen, I think success can be achieved again. I don't mean that at all, but in terms of like just them magic moments, it's just so hard to get so many magic moments in a season like we had then, And it was, because even we had games. Did we have? Was it one of the cup games? Was it Chelsea that year, or was that the year before? Maybe. No, Chelsea was the year before.
It was the year before. I think Jamal Lewis scored, didn't he? The winner for that.
Yeah. Well, it looked like a great header, and then it was like off his shoulder, wasn't it? But Tom Campbell one as well. They all count. Yeah.
But yeah, what I think for me it was the game against Millwall at Carrow Road. That was it 4-3, Jez?
4-3, yeah. It was 4-3.
4-3, right to death.
We were 3-2 down, going into
3-2 down, going inside of through,
And that for me was the sliding doors moment for that season. And it was just before Christmas, wasn't it? And then after that, everything just kept happening. And like the one me and Jez post on the Pinkin forum. You probably know, Stuart, what that is. But I remember there was a thread recently saying about what was one of the most memorable goals you've seen. And for me, it was probably that equaliser by Mario Vrancic against Sheff Wednesday to draw 2-2 in the last kick of the game. The last kick, it's just, that's the stuff that even now gives me goosebumps. And you rewatch that, and I think had we not got that draw, we might not have got that over the line like we did. I think that stuff like that, you just can't. It's Hollywood almost. Jez, you probably have a better memory of it than me, but how would you compare the 11-12 Lambert season with the 18-19?
As I said before, it's just so unexpected. I think with the Lambert one, we were kind of riding on a bit of a crest of the wave. So it's similar to, I'm going to swear here, similar to the Ipswich, where they went up back to back, where they just sort of had that momentum, and Norwich City had that under Lambert, and he also built a squad that was strong enough to compete. Actually strong enough to compete at Championship level, and stay in the Premier League as they did for 3 years or whatever, but different times. But I think for me, it was just. That was my favourite season, was the 18-19 one, because as Stuart said, everything just fell into place. and it was just magical. Like everything, you know, Steeperman cleaning Daniel Farke's car as a bet. I would imagine that he lost at the training ground, or you know, something that he did wrong in training. I don't know, just as a joke. But you know, that was, I think he was dressed in sort of this John Deere farmer's outfit whilst he was having to do it. But little things like that where you could tell that it was magical. The emergence of some of our youth players, the likes of Max Aarons, and who you know went on to play against Real Madrid last season. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, but I think that Valencia actually beat Real Madrid in their backyard. Which you know, he obviously,
they haven't won or drew. They definitely didn't get beat.
No, they did. Yes. So I mean, it was just these players have gone on, and you know, we were talking about Campbell last night, weren't we, Morgan? And you know, he's gone on to have a relatively good career as well. So no, I mean, cut a long story short, 18-19 for me was my personal favourite season, and having the opportunity to obviously speak to Stuart and obviously thank him for his contribution for that's meant the world.
Yeah, I mean, any personal highlights from that season, Stuart?
I think the biggest highlight would be how we all stuck together on the inside. You know, like how we were, you know, we believed so much in what we were doing and how we were doing it. You know, and even when it was rocky, we stuck together. And then even at the end, you know, like getting over the line so hard. You know, we stuck together, and you know, we kept our heads when it would have been easier sort of not to have done that. So that was great. I think a highlight was seeing how much it meant to, you know, people like Delia and Michael, who, you know, maybe wondered if they'd see the club again, have a moment like that in their lifetime. You know, I'm not saying that to be horrible, but you know, they're like all of us getting a little bit older, right? And I think, you know, for them to see it in their vision of a young team, you know, academy graduates playing exciting football, doing it by not outspending. You know, our highest signing at that point was Grant Hanley at $3.5 million. You know what I mean? It was, you know, it wasn't like, you know, we bought our way out of the division or anything like that. You know, we had to do it through smart work and hard work and sort of real sort of togetherness. So that was good. But highlights, I think, the Leeds away game. You know, that was, you know, that was special. You know, because, you know, I remember saying to Delia, we were on like the car or whatever to the stadium. And she was like, "Oh, it's going to be so full tonight, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said the atmosphere will be good tonight because it's 5:30 game, if you remember, on a Saturday. And she goes, "Oh, it's going to be a nightmare getting out." I said, "Oh, no, don't worry, it won't be." I said, "Because we'll be 3-0 up after an hour, the place will be empty." And she's like, "Oh." I said, "No, I'm being serious." She said, "Oh." Anyway, we're 3-0 up after an hour, and it's like, because I've never been so convinced we'll win a game as that game, because I'll never forget, it's still the best I've ever seen us training was on the Friday. And I stood with Neil Adams. I was like, I said, we could hammer them tomorrow night. I said, no, I'm telling you. I said, because of how they play, their man-to-man marking, all the rest of it. If we're on it like this and we've got a pair of bollocks to go up there and we can live with what's going to come at the start of the game, which is tough, as we know, in the crowd and all that sort of stuff. I said, once we break through them 1 or 2 times, I said, it's a club that I know very well, Leeds United. I said, bang, suddenly it becomes a heavy shirt and the doubts come in. And yeah, no, so convinced we'd win a game as that night. I know another really good one was because the day I thought, the day we beat Leeds was the day I thought would win the league. But the day we beat Forest away 2-0, when I think Tim Closer scored 2 from 2 set pieces. And we had no Pookie, if you remember. Pookie was injured and everyone was panicking. Oh, and we won 2-0 or 2-1, because I think Graben scored for them maybe. And I remember that day, we'll get promoted now. Because I remember that day thinking, boy, we've just come to Forest, big club, still had some biggest players at that point by championship standards. And I was like, no, we've stood up to that. And if we can come here and win, like, we must be a good team. You don't fluke that. So yeah, there we go. Obviously, winning the league at Villa Park was amazing, because I remember we got promoted against Blackburn the Saturday before, Saturday night game, wasn't it? And all I could think about was just win the league. Don't mess it up now and finish second. No one remembers who finishes second. Like, win the league. And I probably didn't enjoy the moment enough, actually, of getting promotion because of that. Because I was like in a bit of a grump of, no, we've got to win the league. We have to win the league. We have to put a trophy in the cabinet. We have to win the league. But then to go and win it at Villa Park, and I don't know if you guys were there, but if you remember, they did a guard of honor for us.
That's right.
To go and get the trophy at the end. And obviously Dean was there, the manager, who's just a classy guy, and their players, obviously a couple of them. Neil Taylor was a lad I was with at Wrexham, for example, and it was just like the class of that club. And I remember saying to Daniel, we were walking down the tunnel to go and get a trophy or whatever, and I stopped him. I said, look, because in the wall at Villa Park in the tunnel is the European Cup, is in the like in a glass thing in the wall, and I said, you're about to go and lift a trophy at a stadium like that. This is iconic. This is like a moment which people sort of dream of, because the second time we did it in an empty Oakwell. The rain. It's freezing. I remember being there in a coat like this is me, and it was just didn't mean it. It was just like, this is a bit weird. Whereas Villa Park, it was like, this is one of the most historic grounds in the world, European champions, and look at the class, because even their fans stayed in the stadium. Just that moment of class of. Which I think only big clubs sort of have that about them. Liverpool would do that, wouldn't they? In terms of like, what's the fan base? No, we need to respect the champions here and whatever. And it was, special. Like I say, special times.
I remember seeing photos of you at Villa Park with the trophy, but you don't look very elated. You kind of looked a bit like you sort of didn't know what to do with yourself. Is that because you were feeling?
It's not for me, all that. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'd rather leave that celebration to other people. It's like there've obviously been some good nights out apparently after these celebrations, and I've never been there because that's just not. It's just not really me. I don't like the limelight in that regard. So listen, I'm happy to come out and speak and defend people and stand up for people, but I actually prefer doing it when it's not going right as opposed to when it's going right. I'd rather. I like hearing the stories 2-3 days later. I find it funny when this happened or whatever, and I love hearing the stories and hearing about how much people loved it and enjoyed themselves. But it's not really for me that way. It's just.
I think. Sorry to interrupt. I always remember the following. I think it was the following day outside County Hall, and. Stuart, not County Hall, sorry, City Hall, Kenny McLean walked on stage with the mayor's hat on and bottle of Mad Dog 2020 in his hand. I just wonder how much sleep he had in between the game and walking onto that stage with the Mad Dog 2020. It was hilarious.
Not too much, I can imagine.
Yeah, there was a few of them with eyes like piss holes in snow, but.
Yeah. You have to enjoy these moments because in football and in life, right? It's so hard to remember. That as football fans, right? It's what Norwich have won 7 trophies in the top 2 divisions in the whole of their history. So it's like when one happens, you've got to enjoy it, right? Or else it's you can't just go, oh, it's all right, we'll do it next year. It doesn't work as easy as that, does it? Look how long Man United last won the league in 2013. So it's like as a kid growing up, it thought like. They'd go 12 years without winning the league, impossible. Some of them fans might never see him win a league again at Man United. So you've almost got to enjoy their moments. And for players and staff, it's something you've dedicated your life to. And there's better sporting directors than me who've never got near winning a trophy or getting promoted. You know what I mean? And so when you do it, I think you have to enjoy it.
I think there was something there that you said that I'd like to talk about a little bit. The 18-19 season, obviously, winning the trophy in front of in Villa Park. But you mentioned the 2021, the COVID season. Now, obviously, a bunch of we weren't allowed as fans to come into the stadium. It did feel a bit of a weird. It felt obviously highest points tally in Norwich's history, but it kind of felt a bit hollow. What was your sort of feeling towards it? Was it business as usual? Or how did you feel about it?
It was tough because it was all a bit fake. So and I felt for everyone involved, fans, players, staff, everyone, because it was like we're achieving something incredible here. The football we played that year was unbelievable. But it's almost a bit wasted because people couldn't really enjoy it. And I also think at that time as well, it was towards the end. Well, it was the end of the pandemic, and it was a bit frustrating of can we not get on with this now and get people back here? And it's like, so we couldn't have anyone in the ground in May, yet we had a full Carrow Road in August, and I'm a bit like, well, okay, right, it's all gone away in 2 months, is it? But anyway, that's about, we don't need to get into politics, but it was tough, and we had to try and create as best we could special moments for the staff and players, really, and we had to, the content team did as best they could to involve, the fans as best as they could, but it was tough because it was an hard decision not to let supporters in. Obviously, we would have rather than been there and shared in that moment as well. I do think it helped us in a way at the start of the season because, again, we had a really slow start to the season. And I remember, I think it was Rob Butler on Radio Norfolk said at halftime of the Rotherham game when we were 1-0 down, when winning 2-1, we're 45 minutes away from discussing the manager's future. And I think had the stadiums been full at that time, maybe the grumblings would have been higher, because if you look at that week, we played Rotherham away, we scored 2 late on. Jordan Hugill scored a last-minute penalty to win 2-1. Tuesday night, we played Birmingham at home, and Franjic scored a winner, 89th minute. Following Saturday, we played Wickham at home. Franjic scored again, I think, 89th minute to win the game. And I always think back and think, you know what, if that was a full Carrow Road with expectation, it might have been a bit grumbly, and we might not have been as brave and carried on playing the football. So I actually think, I'm not sure we win the league as well as we did if it's full, because obviously I've subsequently seen what's happened of, in terms of like, if you're not 3-0 up against Rotherham after 10 minutes, it's, this is rubbish.
When you first arrived, how much of the renovation plan was already in place? And we can delve into a bit more in a second.
Yeah, so when I arrived there, I was really surprised at how bad it was, because obviously they're a Cat 1 club. I had loads of time in the Premier League, I think 4 out of the previous 6 years in the Premier League, and I was like expecting a lot more actually from the training centre, and it quickly realised, wow, there's been no investment here at all. And the reasons given were, it was always, if we get to the Premier League, we'll do this. If we stay in, then they get to the Premier League. If we stay in the Premier League, we'll do this. Then they do stay in it. Oh, if we stay a second year, and it's always like tomorrow never comes. And so I mean, the training ground is fascinating. That the academy pitches literally had a hill in it, so they were like, oh no, in the winter you can't play on them; it's flooded. Right? Okay. It was the gym. Literally, you could fit no more than 2 or 3 players in it.
Sorry, if you carry on.
Yeah, so trade ground. So it was so we played Arsenal away in the cup, and we had unbudgeted money. So we were like, right, let's use some of that money to actually start showing some improvements. Because one thing I talk about a lot is, one of our values at the club is growth. Yeah. Was when I was there, which was put together before me. So I'm like, well, okay, growth. Well, let's demonstrate that we're growing the club then, to our staff and to our players. And I was like, this summer, we're going to end up selling James Maddison, Josh Murphy, Harrison Reed will go back, Angus Gunn will go back. I said, we've got to start showing our players and staff that we're not giving up here and becoming like a bog standard championship team. We've got to show them that, we're still trying to step by step build a club. So we used the money from the Arsenal game to put some floodlights on the main training pitch because we had no floodlights. So, if Daniel, which often the case, wanted to train some afternoons, it's like in November, it's pitch black at 4 o'clock. So, I remember some training sessions, they were finishing and it's literally dark. And it's like, so let's get some floodlights. So we did that. So, and then we also did the restaurant area, the canteen. It's like, let's make this an inspirational place that the players want to eat and spend time in. And we had a rule of no phones. So it's like, the longer we can keep them there, the more they talk, the more they connect. Let's make this a hub of the training ground where people actually want to come and talk. Because again, very much my style is it's about people and it's about communications and relationships and all the rest of it. It's like, well, let's create somewhere where people actually want to come. So we did that, so sort of step by step, and then the idea came because I think that what that did, it started off a bit of a movement of people going, something's happening. This feels good. It's an improvement. It's just starting to look elite. So then it was like, well, how can we do the rest? So we were at risk of losing our Category 1 status in the academy if we didn't build some dressing rooms because they were all in porta cabins. So
Right.
the league and the Premier League and all the rest of it, because you're very heavily governed in academies, rightfully. It was like, you have to do this. Like,
Okay.
not would you please or could you? It's like, you have to do this.
Mm.
So at that point, we started this idea from Tom Smith had seen something, and it was in the Canary Bond. I don't know if you remember that, where we basically raised through supporters £5 million. Where basically it
Oh, I
was,
do
let's say
remember. Yes. Yeah.
so you could be an investor to go, right, I'm going to put £100,000 into it. You got
Yeah.
paid, I can't remember the figures, but let's say 5% interest on that, which is more than any bank at the time was offering. And we did a bonus. If promoted, you'd get a 25% bonus. So let's say you did £100,000, you'd get your 5% per year. And then let's say we're promoted in after 4 years, you'd get a bonus of 25 grand. And after 5 years, you'd get your money back anyway. So it's a commitment that it was, and the only risk to you as an investor at the time was if the club went bust. That was literally the only risk, which I mean, people will go, well, a club like Norwich isn't going to, go bust.
Mm.
So that's what we did. And it took off unbelievably. We raised £5 million, literally like that. Could have raised so much more.
Yeah.
Which then give us a chance to build. So we built the academy building and we built a new gym off that. And then obviously subsequently, we actually got promoted within a year of setting that up. So everyone got paid their money back, which is good for us because then we pay interest on the subsequent years, of course. And then obviously from that, we always had like Premier League money to do the rest. So we created a group, Colney Development Group, where we then just step by step, right, got sort of the pitches out, got another desktop pitch for the first team, and all in the end, it came through to the soccer bot, swimming pool, all them sort of things. So, now it's, I mean, you could, you'd call it a world-class facility for sure. Could it be bigger? Could there be more pitches? All that sort of stuff. Yeah, of course. But in terms of what we started with to what, we left it as, it's a real place where staff, players want to come, which is great.
I mean, we're trying to angle for a tour at some stage, but it's one of those things.
Dan Olker should sort that. Yeah, should do like one of these, like a walk-in one or something, and then do a bit in each room or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the behind the scene videos, but I mean, you don't really get like a feeling for like the space of it. Have they still got that? Do you still have the hang? Do they still have the hangar there? Was that still there when you left?
Like the indoor? Do you mean?
Yeah,
the indoor. Yeah, still there. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because you have to have that for category 1 stays.
I mean, so how important do you believe that work was in terms of the future?
Fundamental. I think it's, infrastructure. It's the difference between getting players and not getting players, keeping staff. It's, you have to have that, and, it had to be, because the thing is as well, teams come and go, players come and go, but your facilities, they're there forever. I remember saying about that gym, the gym cost us more or less 2.5 million, let's call it, back then. Yeah. By the way, it's an investment, because to build it now would cost you probably 7, 8, 9 million because of costs and everything going up. So it's like, it's only going to increase the value of the club as well. But I said, if you look at that gym, that will be used every single day of the year, from Christmas Day through to when players are injured in June. It'll be used. It'll be used from 5 a.m. when staff come in, through to 10 o'clock at night when the academy and the women's team use it. So it's like, this is an investment. Like, no one's ever going to look back and go, not sure I built a gym. What's the point in that? And it was like, so it was incredibly money well spent. I think it played a big part, or a good part, in, when the new ownership came in, because I think they realized, actually, we can invest in the team because the facilities are top class. Okay, Road's nothing to do with me. That's a bigger challenge, I'm sure, in the future at some point it's going to have to be dealt with. But in terms of the, it's not like, oh God, I've got to build a training ground now. That's going to cost us 50 million. It's like, that's actually done. So so I mean, it's something that, and the good thing is we involved everyone in that. So that the gym was designed by the people who use the gym. Okay. We got player involvement in some of the projects. So the reason to do the swimming pool in the end was that came from player feedback.
Oh, really?
When we were like, next stage, we could do either some sleeping area, we could do a games room type area, or swimming pool.
Okay.
All the players like, we need a swimming pool. That's I keep going to Total Fitness in Norwich. Be much. So it's like involving people. So like the training ground became all of ours. Do you know what I mean? It became, it wasn't one person's gone and built it. And I think because we had to do it in the way we had to do it at the time at Norwich, we didn't have, obviously rich ownership from that point of view financially. It was like we built it. Do you know what I mean? All of us were involved in that, all the staff, all the players. And I think that's why there's a big sense of pride around it, from everyone. And, and if you would have gone down there, obviously I can't talk about it now, but when I was there, it was always spotless because we all kept it spotless, because it's like, no, we remember what it was like before, and we're actually grateful for having this, So yeah, it was it's good. And for me, no one will ever convince me otherwise that it's so important to do that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, you hear rumours on the grapevine about players coming to Norwich before their training ground was kind of redeveloped, and them doing a U-turn on and going, we're not signing. And I think like that is a really key point in having these facilities that can demonstrate that you're a pro club, right? And I find it really interesting as well that you effectively did user research with players who use these facilities, rather than just going, oh well, this is what we get, this is what I think we need. Because again, going back to my day job, the last few years working in tech, there's been like a lot of people from like top level making decisions on products, and then people not actually buying the products, so then they're costing thousands of pounds, losing money, and people lose jobs. So I think what you're saying there is really really interesting.
Yeah, it's like the swimming pool area. I'm not a great swimmer, but so that was, so I can't say, oh, we need this pool or that pool. I'm not qualified to make that decision. That was designed by our head of sports science, head of medical, because they live it. They know, they understand the flow of the day and all that sort of stuff. As I used to say to them, my job's to get the money. My job's leave that for me to worry about. You just go and do your research. Where's best practice on this? How do we use it? And then make sure when we got it, use it properly. You know what I mean? You'll be accountable when it's actually in. But you've got to trust the experts, because
that's
everything, and certainly I'm not.
So I mean, obviously, you 7 years has it been? Was you at Norwich for 7 years?
Yeah.
God, that's gone so quick, hasn't it? Over your time at the club, who stood out most to you from the academy setup? And then I guess if you can talk a little bit about the development pathway from the academy to the first team, because I think sometimes fans, and myself included in the past, just go, well, why can't that academy player who's really good just go into the first team? Surely that would make sense. So I guess if you can give us what you feel like some of your standout players from that setup, and then talk about the pathway built.
Yeah, I mean, we had some great players come through there. Like ones who just come before I was there. In terms of the two Murphys. Look at the careers they've gone and had after us as well. Jake was playing Champions League, last year or the year before, whenever it was, and will be again this year. Amazing. To be fair, it's hard to pick on one, because they're all like, I've invested so much time in the youth, and it's a big sort of passion of mine. So I'm sort of proud of all of them, and even the ones who haven't gone on and necessarily played at the highest level, but have continued playing, and you still see their name pop up on team sheets in League 2 or League 1, and you think, what, fair play. Like, it's so hard to be a professional footballer, and you sort of stuck at it. Or I remember like Carlton, when he was with us, Carlton Morris, had some horrific injuries, and Carlton's an amazing, bloke. And so like watching him in the Premier League for Luton was just like amazing, like just so much pleasure, because I've seen the pain and that he went through physically and emotionally or whatever with his injuries, and how he's just stuck at it and stayed in the fight. And I think huge sort of respect for him. But I think what we had to do was, there's always talent in the academy for sure. Lots of good people bringing in lots of good players, lots of good work, but we had to get a real clear bridge for these players to play. You can have the best talent ever, but if you don't, get room for him to play in the first team, he's not going to play in the first team. So, I think we did that really well, I think, in our sort of time there. I had a very close relationship with Steve Weaver, who's academy manager. Obviously close relationship with the head coaches, to make sure that we always knew who the best talent were and the right time to push them. Would we have made some mistakes with some? Yeah. Would we have, made some great decisions with some? Yeah. But I think the main thing is we were just all together and we all wanted to do that. Every head coach we appointed knew that there was an expectation to bring players through. And the academy staff knew there was an expectation to keep bringing better players through. We didn't want to provide players good enough just to play in the Championship. We wanted to grow Premier League players, so the demands on our staff was constantly higher. But we had a lot of debuts in my time there, and obviously a lot of them went on and did well, and either for us or we sold them or whatever. So it's it was a great time.
Yeah. So I mean, what is that kind of like pathway from joining the first team? Because I remember when Max Aarons came out, like the first start of 18-19, I was like, who's this? He was a kid, and I was like, who's this kid? Like, how's he got to that? So I mean, what does that transition look like? Can you sort of briefly?
I think every player is obviously different, So some have to go through the loan route. So whether that was like Ben Godfrey, went through a loan route. Todd Cantwell went through a loan route. Brad Hills recently has gone through a loan route, for example. And then you have others who can step up immediately, like Jamal, like Max, Johnny Rowe, they sort of Bombadeli, they could jump sort of straight into it. And so I think you have to treat them all as individual players, and they're all on their own journey. And they all come a little bit later. Max obviously at 18, incredibly early runner. Dealt with everything that was sort of thrown at him. Todd was a bit later. I think he established himself in our team when he was maybe sort of 20ish in the Championship. So Todd maybe needed the experience of going out on loan to Holland and come into it a little bit later. So I think it's all about the individual, but it comes back to communication and having a plan for these guys. And if you've got talent, so for example, Ben Godfrey is a player I tried to sign at Huddersfield from York before he came to Norwich over us. And so obviously I was well aware of him. Madison was one we tried to sign at Wolves. Kieran Scott was our head of youth recruitment at Wolves, tried to sign him from Coventry. Obviously ends up signing for Norwich. So for example, as them two players were ones when I've walked into the club, I'm already really aware of them and really like them. So it's like, right, what's the plan for these two players to get them in the team? Because it doesn't just happen, in my experience. You've got to give room for the academy to breathe. So you've got to have room in your squad. So if you have 30 players, I don't know a manager who's going to play a young player ahead of them. They just don't, because of the dressing room imbalance, etc. So you have to have a squad set up which leaves room for it to breathe. It's a bit like, even take Kellen Fisher, who signed in my last sort of summer window. It was like we knew Max would end up going that window. So it was like we signed Jack Stacey on a free, and it's like, well, Kellen Fisher's going to be number 2 right back. So it's like, well, he's going to get some game time because Jack ain't going to play every minute of every game. I know he's a physical beast, but so it's like he's going to get suspended or whatever. So it's like at that point, bang, Kellen's in. Whereas let's say we had Jack, somebody else, and then Kellen. It's like, well, when's Kellen going to play? He's never going to get the opportunity to play. So you've got to design your squads in a way which gives these to give young players, if you truly believe in young players, it gives these young players a chance to get in the team. Because if you have it full up, the reality is they won't get a chance. Or if you knew it's 20 minutes in a cup game and he didn't perform, great. So that's how we did it. But again, collaboration. It's people talking all the time. People challenging, people debating. Giving evidence to go. Listen, this player is physically as good as what X player was who played in our first team. He is ready, or actually no, he's not ready. Maybe needs a loan. Involving all this super experienced people in and around the club. So it's not like one person going, "Oh, right, Max is good enough. Yeah, put him in the first team." It's like, no, it's a collective of journey of doing that.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like,
brave enough to play him. That's the guy, and you have to support him as a club to be brave to play them.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting that you map that out, because I think it's easy for fans like myself or Jez to just think these things happen in a vacuum, and it's not like, like you just said, a simple FIFA swap out of X player for Y player. you know, there is discussion points. I imagine you have, I don't know, do you have player roadmaps like as for their development? And I suppose you have milestones.
And there's certain milestones that you want them to hit, and different things, and then you just don't know how they emotionally. The first time they train with the first team, it's 18-year-old, it's daunting. You got senior international players, and some players melt at that point. Oh, they're not quite ready, right? Bring them back. Some go in the other way, maybe too cocky or too whatever, and the lads have to put them back in their place. And they're all, it's different. They don't know how they're suddenly going to be when they earn a bit more money, when they suddenly play in a cup game and they've got fans waiting outside for selfies, or they can change. And it's it's about like the human element of some of these guys as well. And sometimes you got to protect them and go, he's not quite ready for this. Like, don't do it yet. It's too early. I've seen lots of careers at lots of clubs ruined because they've been pushed too early, because there's been maybe a clamber of, just got to get one in. It's like, no, they have to be ready. Steve Weaver used to have a saying all the time. He used to say to managers, I'm not here to get you the sack. So I'm not recommending a player to you if I don't think he's ready. Like, it's not a numbers game. It's like, no, I'll tell you when they're ready. And people like Steve, obviously incredibly experienced. It's like, he's probably a bit harsh on when that is. He isn't in a rush. He'll wait a bit longer because he's like, no, you got to earn your right. I just have one good under-21 game. Oh, I scored 2 in the under-21 cup. Oh yeah, get him in the first team.
Yeah,
no, didn't track back once. Didn't press. Didn't do all the bits where if you don't, it's not enough just scoring a couple of goals. If you're not willing to run, you're not willing to press. If you're not going to make tackles, the manager's going to rely on you. Right, last minute of the game, I've got to rely on him to make a tackle. Well, I'm not sure I want to do that. So it's you've got to ready, and we can't set up young players to fail. I hate that when you see clubs, get him in, and he's in around it at 17, and a blind man can see he's not ready, and it's like, you know what? In 3 years, you'll be out the game, and where will you be? You'll still be here, and you only did it for your own ego, or look at me, I believe in youth development. No, I don't like that. Youth development doesn't happen by accident. There's a lot of hard work, and it's not easy, because if it was easy, every club would do it.
Yeah,
it's not easy. It's not easy to play for Kings Lynn, is it? Let's be honest. People play for Kings Lynn. You've got to be a good player to play for Kings Lynn, and you've got to have a good mentality. There's not many people in the world who are good enough to play football for Kings Lynn, let alone when we're trying to talk about Premier League players. So you have to respect the levels and how hard it is to be a professional. And to be a professional footballer. Can
I just throw this at you? So youth development, you see it bandied around a lot. Do you think it's become a bit of a buzz term?
Yeah, I think there's loads of buzz terms. Data's buzz term, youth development's buzz term. It's like data, it's like, well, we use data on every signing we did at Norwich and Huddersfield. The last 10 years, data isn't some new thing. It's become sexy. And the same with youth development. It's buzzwords, and in the wrong hands, it's dangerous, because in the wrong hands, you have people talking about youth development who have never been involved in youth development, and it's like that's be careful. You know what I mean? It's like, again, you wouldn't have it in another world, would you? I couldn't just rock up now and go, I'm going to be a university lecturer. You'd have to go, well, mate, he's trained for 10 years to be a university lecturer. What are you on about? But again, in football, sometimes it's the lazy thing. I understand youth development.
Yeah.
Do you? What? Because you were a football player for 10 years. Yeah. I went to school for 10 years. I can be a teacher now, can I? Well, no, you need to qualify. You need to hard yards, blah, 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 blah. And I think, we get caught up in that in football quite a lot, I think.
No, it's funny. And I think the way you portray that is similar to, we had Gary Holt, who obviously ex-Norwich, and he said that he hates it now. And I hope he doesn't mind me quoting him, but he hates the fact that players that go straight into management without earning their stripes, without going and learning about being a coach and the human aspects of it. And I spent some time working in an admin role, albeit at Stevenage Football Club in their academy, and the coaches there and the management team there used to look at the parents and look to see what kind of people they were, and look at the dad and see how he's going to, perhaps how the boy's going to develop genetics and all that as well. So, how much was that a part at Norwich in terms of, the youth set up, looking at the parents and their kind of A, mentality, and B, physicality?
It's tough because, you're getting less and less parents, still together, for example, and certainly where we recruited players from, it's, often you wouldn't see the parents because it came from a long way away, and we'd do the transport and stuff like that. That's like every academy in the country. So, but yeah, I think all you're wanting from parents really is, we all want the best for their son. So it's like, help us on that journey, like help us when we got to be tough with him sometimes, help us, be honest with him, but leave it to the experts as well to do their jobs. You wouldn't say to a surgeon, would you, before brain surgery, have you thought about using this scalpel? Someone will go, stay out of it. It's the same with this, but unfortunately, that's a whole minefield for youth development as well now, agents and parents and stuff like this, and because everyone thinks they know, everyone thinks they know the answers, and it's it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, have we talked about the Premier League seasons yet, Morgan?
We haven't talked about the Premier League challenge, as you but you're back in play, and the weight of the world is not on my shoulders. Maybe you can ask that question.
I don't think the weight of the world is ever on your shoulders, Morgan, to be honest. I think you're always quite this sort of chilled out man with a fabulous quiff. But yeah,
you have no idea.
There we go. There we are. Anyway, so Stuart, but both in 2019 and 2020, we had unique challenge of shaping a squad for Premier League survival. And how difficult was it balancing ambition and financial reality? And were there any particular moments or individuals that stood out for you during those two campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, listen, they were tough, the Premier League campaigns for sure. And I mean, you only have to see I saw something yesterday that Sunderland are already maybe the 5th highest ever money spent by a newly promoted team. And I looked at the figure, like 130 million. I'm like, bloody hell, I didn't even know they signed anyone. Where's that gone? You look at what like an Ipswich did last year, what Leeds are doing now. It's like, we were never in a position to financially compete with these clubs, and even Brentford, people say, oh, Brentford, yeah, you should have done a Brentford. We tried. They outbid us for Christopher Ayer by an extra 5 million and give him 15 grand a week more than we could. So little old Brentford, I always go back on that. People talk about Brighton. The owner's 800 million in to that club so far. So give us 800 million, we'll stay in the Premier League, definitely. I promise you that. So it was always really, really hard. And listen, could we have done things better? Yeah, of course we could. And so many things we could have done better. But it's tough, it's so tough. And I just hope now, as the club goes forward with Mark, as and when the club get back there, and let's be honest, he's showing it in the Championship, investing so much money, by Championship standards, but certainly by Norwich standards in recent times, hopefully, because the only way is to spend, that is the reality, and whether that's spending heavily in the Championship so that when you get there, your base level of player is already better. But certainly when you get up there, spending more money, and also having a way of football to give yourselves a chance to stick into it. Our football, we stuck with our principles, which I'm proud of, but it also did cost us. I'm not sure how the fans would have reacted if we would have got promoted and then day one we sit in a low block and we're doing long throws and all that. I'm not sure how long that would have lasted, to be honest. So when people say do that, it's like, that's easy for you to say, but that might have not worked as well. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, but again, there was some good moments within that. We still had young players playing. We had young players making debuts. We had some really good performances. I still would have loved to have seen. We'll never know, of course. But what would have happened if COVID hadn't have hit? Because we were just hitting form. We were starting to, the lads, Daniel, everyone was like, oh no, we're getting into this now. And I think we would have got a lot closer to staying up. Might have still gone down, absolutely. I'm not going to sit here. I would definitely say it because that'd be wrong for me to say that. But we were close at that point, and even I remember that first year we played. So VAR came in, which I can't. It's not for me. VAR, just to put it on the record. I think it's ruined football. As a spectator in the stadium point on TV. If you want to watch 5 minute, great, and go to the toilet and get a cup of tea. But I'm on about in the stadium. It's like what is this? But I remember we played. Arsenal at home, and we had the Tim Krul saves a penalty. They make us retake it because Max Aarons was leaning in the box. What? Never happened without VAR. We had the Pookie offside with his armpit against Spurs.
That's right.
So there's 4 points we've left behind. We had Palace at home where they score a last minute equaliser, Connor bloody Wickham, and the linesman gives offside. He wasn't offside, in fairness, so VAR was right. But again, if VAR didn't exist, it's like that's another 2 points. We had Villa away where horrendous refereeing decision cost us, and it's like you just think, oh my god, like we weren't that far away. History books will say we were, not a problem. So shoot me down for that, but we weren't that sort of far away, I think. But by the time and this shows you how quickly the Premier League's developing. By the time we got there the second time, which is only just over a year later, really.
Yeah.
Level had gone up. It's gone up again. Do you know what I mean? Of the competition, and we tried to spend a bit there from the money we made from selling Buendia, but in reality, our highest signing was still £9 million. So it's like, you're looking at what clubs can do now. It was tough. It was tough.
I think the 5 clubs thing as well, Stuart, killed it a little bit, because you had a club like Norwich that if they brought 5 subs on, it probably wasn't going to have a bigger impact than if it was like a Liverpool or even like the mid-table teams that have got those big Premier League squads. That they can make a massive difference by changing half of the outfield squad at any given point. And for a club like Norwich, particularly in that first season, and I think that's why. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we did struggle quite conclusively in that the project restart, which is bollocks anyway. Because I agree with you. I think that Leicester game where Jamal Lewis scored from the edge of the box, great goal, and won 1-0. We were on a roll. It looked like we were starting to put some performances together, and then all of a sudden, we were stopped for 2 months. I guess in a roundabout way, I think there's changes that are being made. Those changes that are being made with the substitutes, I think, killed it.
Yeah.
Still do.
I mean, I think
I was never a fan of that.
I think it's worthwhile saying, though. I mean, I know it must have been incredibly tough, but you did it. You got Norwich promoted twice into the Premier League, and I think it's fair to say you had a crack. And like you said, it's when
with the resources that you had available.
When you have other clubs that are just, I remember Newcastle being down there towards the end of I'm just looking at the date now, 2021, and they ended up getting in Eddie Howe, I think. Then he changed it, and it turned around. But just little things like that sort of disrupted it, and it was it was a shame, but I still think that good things came out of all of that, and again, like Jez said earlier, I appreciate all the 7 years that you put in. I've had a great time being a Norwich fan. It's not been boring. It's not been boring. We're not, and no disrespect to Preston or whoever, we're not sort of sat there and sort of just drifting along in the Championship forever. Has been a crazy ride the last 7 years. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, it's been good fun.
And I think as well as you guys probably talked about Colney when I had my my technical difficulties, but I think just to touch on that, I think we're moving on to sort of the Atanasio investment. Easy for me to say, but probably my first question there would be: do you think they would have invested if they hadn't have seen the work that you had done, you and your team had done at Colney to bring it up to where it is today, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I don't know if they wouldn't have done. You'd have to ask them that. But I think Morgan and I spoke about when you cut off there. It certainly played a part, because they could come in and go, "Oh wow, okay, we don't need to spend £30 million on facilities. We can put that into the team, for example, or other projects." So it certainly played a part, I think, and probably has helped fast track them to where they are today. Where they're putting a lot of money into the team and into the squad, because it's not like, oh, do we buy a midfielder for £5 million, or do we build part of the academy building? It's like, oh, brilliant, academy building's done, great. So I think it's hopefully that that's helped. I think as well for Delia and Michael, what a legacy to leave when they passed the club over. That they've left. The facilities are great. We had the women's team that we brought in-house. They were always previously run sort of almost by the charity arm of the club. So, we brought Flo Allen in and we moved them over to Colney as well. So literally all of the football was there. So, in terms of like for Delia Michael's legacy, they've left, a healthy championship club, amazing supporter base, top class facilities, trophies in the cabinet, academy pathway, loads of academy debut, and the women's team on board as well, which is great, and that was, always part of the business stuff. For the Atanosios to come in, hopefully they see it as a brilliant foundation for them to build on and, hopefully take the club to a level where we are in 5 years talking about, like Brighton now or whatever, how amazing would that be?
I mean, obviously that segues nicely into talking about Atanasio. What involvement did you have with that whole takeover?
Yeah, so well, obviously not the takeover bit because that happened post me, but in terms of them coming in, Michael Folger wanted to sell his shares, and they, he asked for some support with that in terms of, from the club side. So, myself, Zoe, Anthony, went about basically looking about how do you get investment into a football club, and it led us to a number of groups of people that we ended up speaking to and interviewing, because the benefit we had with Michael, and this is testament to him as a Norwich fan and as a human, it wasn't about how much money he could get, because he could have got a lot more money by selling it to whoever. It was about, are they the right people and do they fit in with Delia and Michael and the club? And it would have been easier for him not to just have taken an extra whatever, and I don't give a, not my problem. But he wasn't like that, which is amazing. So it was about us effectively interviewing people, really, and sharing, this is a club, this is a culture. You got to remember, like, with like the CSF, it's the only club in this region, as or obviously this half of the region, and it's like, so it is more than just a football club, who plays every Saturday. The community reach for the children, all of our community, it's like huge. So you have to have someone who fits that values. 20-odd thousand season ticket holders. It's not just a couple of thousand. It's a lot of people that, this is important that, it is a community club. Yeah. And you can never lose that, because it's such a massive part of the community. When people talk about Norfolk, they talk about Norwich, don't they? So it had to be people who in the end, Delia and Michael Folger truly believe fitted into them values, irrelevant what I thought or anyone else. It was like they had to get comfortable with that. But through that process, lots of calls, lots of visits from different people, obviously including in the end Mark and his guys. And yeah, Michael Folger and Delia Michael felt that he was the right, or him and his group, because obviously it's a group with the right people. And again, I can only talk about my time there. He was fantastic, the support, communication, really good guy, gets it, understands it, ambitious but not stupid. And I think he's a perfect fit for the club in my opinion. Having had time at the club, I think he's a perfect fit to take on Delia and Michael's legacy and wave the flag with great pride, like they've done. It's always tough, I think, for guys the other side of the world because they can't be here, and at some point that will become a criticism, because it's an easy stick to beat them with. Of course, he's not a fan, he's not here, but my God, they care so much. I think they really do. So I think it's a good fit.
Yeah,
sorry, Morgan, after you.
Mark did a recent Mark, like I know him personally. Mark Antanasio did an interview actually recently with the guys from the Pinkin, and I think that was seemed like quite a candid interview. Obviously, he's not going to go into all the details about everything, but I think he came across like he gives a shit. And I'm going to throw a question at you, Jez, but like in the past, hadn't Delia been approached by other potential investors? I think was Tony Fernandez one of those.
Yeah, there's been two or three. I mean, obviously Tony Fernandez is the one that everyone remembers because it was quite recent. But there was a gentleman by the name of, I can't remember his first name, and I might be racially stereotyping here, but Giovanni Di Stefano, I think his name was, and this was back in the 90s. And then he
Oh, 100%, yeah. I think it'll be a thriving club. They might not own it then because 25 years is a long time away, but yeah, I think it'll only go from sort of strength to strength. It is, how I see it. Obviously, I'm on the outside now, like you guys, in terms of supporting from a distance. But I think it's not only words, it's their actions. And if you look at the amount of money they've invested in the squad, much more money than I ever had in Championship or Premier League, to be fair. So it's like they're putting the money where the mouth is, aren't they? In fairness to them, they've recruited 2 managers that they've had to pay compensation for. That's a new thing for Norwich. It certainly didn't in my time. We didn't ever have money to buy a manager. It's like, you had to find a different way. So I think, in fairness to them, everything they talk about doing, they're doing it, and they're doing it in a strategic, smart way. They're not just splashing dough, are they, on silly things. They're trying to buy investments in terms of players or young coaches or whatever. So they're doing it alongside what their strategy, but they're certainly, it looks on the outside at least, really backing what the guys want to do there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, moving on then, perhaps, when did you sort of feel it's the right time to move on from your role at Norwich? And then what was the process like in selecting Ben Napper as your successor?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about it for a little while. I was getting tired. I was approaching 40, and I was like, I want to climb Everest. And it was like, okay, I've got to make a decision here, really, for myself, not for anybody else, for myself. And then obviously got to make a decision to be fair to the club and to sort of Delia and Michael and all the staff. And that's what I made it. I made it a year out from the date I'd leave for Everest, because I had a year's notice period on my contract, so I had to give a year's notice. Couldn't just leave. So I went to see Delia and Michael at the house. I think they probably knew what was coming, because very rarely did I ring him and say I need to come to your house unless it was something serious, and there was nothing else bubbling at that time for them. So I rang Mark Atanasio and told him as well after I told Delia and Michael. And then we kept it very, very private in the club, because 1, they were still open to me changing my mind. And 2, it was like we were in the end of that season where we were still in the playoff hunt that time. We obviously had the bad injuries away at Blackburn when Hanley and Gibson got injured, and it really sort of hurt us. But we're still in that race. So I'm like, don't want to be announcing something now which could cause disruption to the end of the season. This end of the season is more important than me. So that's why we announced it in whenever we did, May or June, I think. It's certainly post the season. So I had to work my notice period in terms of appointing my successor. That was something the club did. So they used an outside company, very much like the company now that I now own, but we didn't exist back then, unfortunately. So they used a company to go and recruit or to go and speak to individuals. Obviously, Ben was obviously one of them. And the only role I played in it was in the final interview stage. The board asked me, would I sit in it from a technical point of view, as opposed to anything else. And then I did that for the last people in the process. And then the club subsequently decided who they wanted to do, which obviously was Ben. So and then when Ben, he only had, I think, a month or something he could leave Arsenal quite quickly, basically. So at that point, I was a bit like, well, how do you want to play this? Like, do you want us to work parallel. I'm happy to do. I'll do whatever for the club. Delia Martin, I was like, no, I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Of course.
I said, but really, as well, to give him the best chance of doing his job, I'm not sure he needs me hanging over, because I'm quite a big personality, certainly within the club at that point. I'd either recruited every staff member or kept them, and the same with the players. So naturally, if they're walking off, they're just going to speak to me. And because of my personality is I talk to everyone, even more so they're just going to come and talk to me. It's not like I'm aloof or I don't talk to anyone. It's like every day I would talk to everybody. So it's a bit like, if I'm hanging around here, which contractually I'm obliged to do, so absolutely no problem, is that going to help the new person, whoever that would have been? But obviously in this case, Ben, settle in, and so it was decided, well, actually, no, you can leave, but obviously you're under contract and you're at the end of the phone if needs be, either for Ben or for the board. To be honest, from that period onwards, the only people really was some of the staff would reach out. I met David Wagner quite a lot, because he was sort of struggling a little bit with a few bits. So or not struggling, but wanted someone to sort of bounce some stuff from. And obviously our relationship previously at Huddersfield, there's high trust there. So and then just sort of slowly drifted away.
So you make it sound like you passed away.
No, not quite. That was almost 6 months later.
Like, effectively, you were on sort of like on gardening leave. Is that sort of?
No, I was on gardening leave at all. No, it's literally just be at the end of the phone for us if we need you. Okay. But I didn't think it would be helpful at that time to be at games, because it's just like, who's in charge here? Someone else was taking over it. You got to let him get on with it. You knew I was there if you needed me, and if you didn't as well, I respected that. It was like no problem, but it wouldn't have helped if I was there for his sort of settling in period. So I disappeared in the background, and spoke to ownership level a bit, because they wanted to pass some things by me or get my opinion on stuff. Some staff, some of the handover stuff was, bloody hell, have you still got the such and such? Yeah, of course, I'll just email it you now in 10 minutes. So it's like, just stuff, because as a person as well, there was no animosity. So it's a bit like, well, someone could ring me now and go, well, I speak to lots of staff now, but Lee Dunn might ring me. Do you remember the agent of X player? Yeah. So I'll send you a number. It's just, but I'd still have that conversation with people back who I worked with at Liverpool. That's just normal when you get on with people. So that was the end. The last game was Cardiff away, which was great, because Adam Eder scored the winner from all of 1 inch, and obviously we won the game. And that was, if I could have picked a way to finish, it would have been a young player scoring the winner. So that was amazing, and I took my lad on the pitch, and which wasn't planned, it just happened. It was Andy Hughes actually the first to go, come on the pitch, come on, you'll be all right. So I come on the pitch, and then the boys and the staff did a guard of honor, which again wasn't planned, was amazing, was beautiful. So it's great, and it was enjoyable.
Would it be fair to ask this question, and please don't feel like you need to, but would you be able to perhaps talk about the job that Ben Napper's currently doing, and what is your feeling on that? Do you think that he's doing a good job at the moment? Do you think I'm not asking you to sort of critically assess him or whatever, but what do you think of the job he's doing currently at the club?
Yeah, listen, it's tough to answer because I'm not there. Do you know what I mean? And I always think, if you haven't got the real context of people's jobs, you're not there day to day, it's super hard. People would have judged me on stuff where I would have been like, hang on a minute, if you would have been there, you would have made a similar decision. I think overall, he seems to be, doing well. If you look at the amount of signings the club's done in the last, what's it now, 3 transfer windows in terms of summer 24, winter 25, and now, they've signed, a lot of players, a lot of young players, a lot of interesting talents for sure. So yeah, I'm sure he's learning sort of quickly on the job, probably learning quickly how big the club is. It is a big club because there's no other competition. So like the focus is massive, like with the local media, things like you guys and some of your other people who do it as well. There's a constant eyeballs on it. It's very hard to escape because there's not another club in the city that can be compared with it. It's really just this one, and that is tough. That is draining, and it's a challenge. And I think again, only touching from the outside, I think he's dealt with that stuff really well. Seems very level in that regard, and keeping people on side, and good messaging and all that sort of stuff. But in the end, it comes down to how the team performs, doesn't it? It's that'll be where everyone's judged, right? All of us. That's what's what you sign up for when you do this sort of role. Is in the end, the proof's in the pudding on the pitch, and I'll always have to live with the 2 relegations of proof's in the pudding. Yeah, I've got to live with that. Live with the obviously the 2 promotions as well. Yeah, great, lovely. That proof's in the pudding. You can't say with fluke promotion. It's like you don't fluke promotion after 38. But you also don't. You're not unlucky to get relegated after 38. So it's like your sort of body of work is there to be assessed, and often it's a long time sort of after. I'm pretty sure my body of work will in 10 years will be looked back on critically, positively, somewhere in the middle, whatever it might be. Josh Sargent was the worst player ever. I'm pretty sure now 90% of Norwich fans will be crying into their cereal if he falls in the next few weeks. Borges signed 2. Are they signing him for a free transfer? Bloody hell! Oh, okay, he's actually not bad. So it's like and then there'll be other players that haven't done it. So it's I think in the end, this job, Ben will be judged on probably after he's left, like me, because the job of the sporting director isn't just about the right here and now. It's about infrastructure, academy, etc., etc., etc. So it's like we'll see how well that goes. But no, I think he's from what I can see on the outside anyway. I think he's dealt with it pretty well, because it's not an easy club to do that role in.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about how big the club is. Me and Jez started doing this podcast last September, and I was his first guest, and then I've been co-hosting since January this year. And people always say, "Oh, Norwich is a big club," and the words "big club" kind of get again bandied around. You hear it and you don't really think anything of it. But having done this podcast so far, and having spoken to so many different people around the world and locally and nationally, it's crazy how far reaching this club is, and how much it means to people. And I never really thought about that. You pay your money, you go watch the football, you come home, whatever. But since doing this, it's really opened my eyes to just how big the club is. And you're right, like it must have been it's a mighty tanker to have to steer. So I think that I'd like to think that you did a pretty damn good job of doing so.
Well, I did my best. Do you know what I mean? And that's all you can do, right? Is you do your best, and you hope to leave it better than what you found it. And I truly believe that in lots of ways. So that's all you can do. But it's a great club, and that's why it can become an established Premier League club, because it's got, again, respectfully to your Brentfords and Brightons, it's a bigger club than them. And so it can get there, and it can stay there, and it can go from strength to strength. I'm convinced about that. That's why I stayed as long, because I truly believed in that. And it really can. I think just everyone needs to stick together and keep believing in it, and know it's not easy. So it's like there will be games where you lose. You might lose to Ipswich for the first time this year. It's like get over it is my suggestion. If that happens, it's like don't judge everything on that. Do you know what I mean? It's like come on. It's think bigger picture, and I know it's hard in the moment, don't get me wrong, but it's like, come on, something's happening, that people are trying their best. You've got ownership investing now. There's great infrastructure there. There's top people. It's like, come on, let's get behind it.
Definitely. Morgan?
I think you've sort of covered about a few things that you might have done differently in the past, but I think now looking ahead, can you just describe what's the sort of what are you up to basically? What's the future hold for you right now?
Yeah, so post Norwich was always a case of Everest, then take time out. So that was my plan. Always thought, didn't want to put a time frame on how long out, but certainly a year was in my head at that time, which is more or less what I did. Then got some offers to go back, but it was nothing which excited me. And I've been very clear, if I'm going to do this job again, because I know how much of a life it takes up, it's got something I really want to do, and ideally abroad. And go and have a completely new experience and become more rounded and develop more, etc., etc., etc. Because I'm only 41. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not, it feels like people feel like I've been around forever, but I'm actually young, still in the sporting director world and still super ambitious. I always wanted to own my own business, so I got into setting up a business with a couple of colleagues and a couple of friends. So really enjoyed doing that, which has been great. And whatever I do, that'll continue to be part of my life now because it's really good fun. And we've done some really good work with some clubs and some people within clubs. So it's been sort of great to still be involved in football, if you like, but also not, caught up too much in the pressure of a Saturday afternoon. So yeah, we'll see what's next. I've got something very, very close happening in terms of a new club, which will be abroad. So I'm just literally waiting on something for that, and then hopefully in the next few weeks I can tell you what that is. But it's one I've been waiting for, and it's very different and it's very, very sort of exciting. So it's fingers crossed nothing goes wrong with that, and then I'll be back having that experience.
Cool. Do you want to just plug your business that you set up?
Yeah, so we set up a company. It's called Bromby and Partners because Lee Bromby, who actually had a loan spell at Norwich, he's on our wall in the link. So we named it after him because I didn't want my name on it, and nor did Darius, who we also do it with. So the company is Bromby and Partners, and basically it's a recruitment in sport company. So for example, a bit like the company that Norwich used to replace me with, an outside company to go and find the best talent available who could be interested in the role. So it's like that. So whether it's a physio, sports scientist, head coach, whatever. So it's a company for that. And then alongside it, we've been doing some consultancy bits for clubs. Maybe a couple needed support, just some process stuff around the transfer window. Others have needed some support around. We're thinking of going Cat 2 to Cat 1 academy. Could you do some benchmarking work for us? Could you do some, is that viable for us from a completely neutral point of view? Because obviously, let's say our academy staff saying, yeah, we must go Cat 1. It's like, well, they might be saying that for their own egos of, I want to be a Cat 1 academy manager, as opposed to, is that the best thing for that football club in that area of the country that they're in? It's all sort of stuff like that. And like I say, it's been good fun because, you're having lots of conversations with owners and sporting directors and chief execs and stuff. It's been, enjoyed it really.
That's brilliant. Really good.
And if this job hadn't come up, I would have carried on just doing that. It certainly was. It ruled me out of going back, let's say, to a championship club. It was like, nah, I'd rather do the business than do that.
Yeah, 100%. Right, it's come to that time, Stuart, where we hand over to Morgan for his random question of the week. So talking of fun, Morgan, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm not going to apologise for it. It's just going to happen. So bear with me, okay? It happens. I do this every week, Stuart. So random question of the week.
I don't know what's coming.
So if you cast your mind back to the 18-19 season, there was that really, I don't know the send up of the office because it loops right back round to when you guys mentioned the office earlier. So I was like, and Jez will love this. So if you cast your mind back to that sketch that you did, I think it was for season ticket holders or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it reminded me a bit of the office. So thinking on that line, I thought so. So who out of the office? Huh?
Just to be clear, that was the idea.
It was very good. What character out of the office most represents yourself and why?
Oh God. Well, it's got to be David Brent, isn't it? Because to be honest, if you speak to anyone who's worked with me, so you have a split really. It's quite funny. The Office, people either love it or have never watched it, stroke don't like it. It's like no one in the middle goes, yeah, it's all right. It seems to be a bit like Trump, really. It's a bit like I love him or you don't. It's like the Office seems to be like that because obviously some of the guys are younger, right? That I'm working with. So I'm saying an Office gag, and they're just staring at me, and I'm thinking The Office, and they're like, no, I'm not seeing it, mate. And I'm like, oh, I feel old here. No, so yeah, it's definitely some David Brent because ultimately. Someone who really cares about people and the organisation, all the rest of it, but ultimately, wants to mess around and sort of be funny or whatever, and But yeah, oh my God, the amount of office. The thing is, as well, sometimes, and people didn't pick up on it. I've done media stuff where like some of the guys have been saying, "Oh, try and get a line in," and I've put lines in media that's never been picked up, and I'm like, it's actually sort of mental, you know, like, and
yeah, I've seen it.
If we did like a staff brief or whatever like that, I would drop in lines, and you'd have 3 or 4 in the audience go like laughing their heads off. The others like, what's he mean by that? You know what I mean? And but yeah. I mean, The Office. I absolutely love The Office. I love Ricky Gervais, David Brent, all that sort of stuff. Is just funny. But yeah, I mean, probably not proud to say David Brent, but yeah, have to be.
Did you take your Black Labrador to Colney after you left? Or?
Yeah, Nelson, great man, great dog.
Yeah.
I went back and this isn't true, by the way, just for the benefit of the doubt. Pink in the headline. I went back and said to Ben, here's a fella who nicked my job. Nah, I didn't want it anyway. And it's like, you can't keep turning up here, Stuart. Yeah, I can. You know, it's like when they go in, you need to call ahead. I'm not going to call ahead. Is
he banned as well? Can he come in for a meeting?
Well, yeah, come for a meeting. What about a meeting? Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, the amount of times I've sat with people and gone like, I don't give shitty jobs, and they're like, what? And it's like, if they get it, it's fine. And one of my someone else close to the academy loved it as well. Clive Cook, his name is, and one day I'm coming off this one morning, and he's just put up on my board Desiree. Do you know what I mean? So I left it there forever, and every so often with like a player or whatever, I'd be like looking like that, Desiree, and he'd be like, "What?" And then actually above my head, I bet they've taken it down now because it would be above Ben's head. I had the Dolly Parton quote. To get to the rainbow, you got to put up with the rain with that. Because obviously in The Office, they're like, you know which philosopher said that? Dolly Parton. Everyone thinks she's just a big pair of tits. So I had that quote above my thing. Yeah. And it was amazing how many people were like, oh, it's really good that. As if like some great philosophy.
When you've you've got another club on the line and you're signing a player, how much are we talking?
Yeah, what's the bunch here?
Jez, I knew you'd love this one.
Oh, it's amazing.
I threw Jez a lie. I said I was going to ask you some kind of like really serious, deep question. So I was like, and I rethought about this last week, and I was like, I'm going to ask him about The Office. And Jez will lose his mind.
Yeah. The best bit of that. Go on, Stuart, Carol.
People like the club secretary, Andy Blofeld, Phil, player liaison, Phil Lithgow. Like they love it. Like, so, like I'd go in their office every day and like Phil would be like, oi, no professionals. And I'd be like, I'm not a professional. Well, you bloody should be, and all it like, it's just, oh yeah, God, they were fun days. You know what I mean? And sometimes, when it's hard, we went through, obviously like everyone else, but went through a pandemic, went through relegations and that. I do believe like humor helps you through things, I lost with a couple of other guys, a really close friend last week in Joey, and we have to talk about the funny stories of that. Do you know what I mean? Not the somber part of it. You've got to laugh your way through it because, it's as I used to say to people, like that's my version of a hug. That, do you know what I mean? Is taking the piss. It's like, it's yeah, you have to laugh or else you take life too serious. It's over in it before we know it. So it's like we may as well have some fun and a laugh along the way.
Yeah. You're going to ask me, aren't you, Morgan?
Of course I am.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to say Chris Finch because I am a bloody good rep.
Bloody good rep. Leeds doing well.
You don't even like football. Guilty. I support Reading.
I support Reading. Yeah. What a line.
More of a rugby man admits it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I could go on forever.
Oh,
I love the bit where right at the start where he goes, I got the man for the job, he's perfect.
He's perfect.
Oh, so cringy.
Has he passed his UEFA B coaching qualification license? He gives the tests.
He gives the tests. He does all that with those. He's perfect.
So, yeah, Chris Finch, but probably Gareth, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah, territorial army and all that. Yeah.
Assistant to the regional manager.
Yeah. Yeah, assistant to the regional manager. Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know, Jez. You've got
What about you,
elements. You've got elements of Brent in there as well, because the voice notes, Stuart, that Jez always ends up leaving me like for this his vanity project is always like he signs off doing like, go on, can you do it now? Do the voice. Sign off.
Meeting with Jennifer Taylor Clark present.
Stop looking at my shirt.
I wasn't.
But yeah,
that's that sort of vibe. Yeah, but no. Amazing. Who would you be, Morgan?
Is the guy from Swindon called Neil? Because he's got that. He's got that really cool. He's got that really cool midlife crisis leather jacket, and I've got a midlife crisis leather jacket that I pop out from time to time. This podcast this podcast is a midlife crisis, isn't it, Jez?
Yeah, Sergio Giorgini, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, expensive.
But yeah,
and then he puts his feet on the table, doesn't he? Nice heels. You can still find them.
Yeah, you still find them. Yeah, that's an earring. Whatever. Yeah, I could go all day. Jesus, do another.
Honestly, we should do another podcast about just do David Brent or The Office. But...
You have 2 viewers going. What's this here?
All 5 of them, Jez.
Yeah,
exactly. Stuart, thank you so much. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No problem.
Thank you for giving 2 hours of your time. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Best of luck. Well, once again, thank you so much for everything you did for Norwich City from the bottom of my heart. And some great memories, as we've discussed for the last 2 hours. But no, thank you, and good luck with everything that you do. Good luck with your new projects.
Thank you.
Yeah,
anyone you want to say goodbye to before we go? Or anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Me?
Yeah.
No. Is that a trick question? Is there someone?
No.
Jez,
no, not at all.
Can you do all your serious talk now, please?
I can. Just for everyone else watching, please like and subscribe on our channel for more great content, and you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Look forward to speaking to everyone soon. I've been David Brent.
I've been Morgan Hewitt.
I've been Stuart Webber.
Said with such enthusiasm. Thanks everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.